During her successful career, author Jane Green has penned 10 popular works of fiction, including her most recent novel, Second Chance. Today, Green resides in Connecticut, quite far from where she was raised. My Library DV recently had the opportunity to sit down with the author in the living room of her beautiful home to discuss her life and career.
I grew up actually in the centre of London and always had this dream. I had two dreams. One was to live in the country and the other was to live in America. And I've been coming to America since I was a little girl. My parents had friends in New York who had a place in the Hamptons, and I used to go there every summer, and there were a pack of us kids and we'd all be in the back of pickup trucks and just racing around. And I loved America. I always wanted to live here. And I moved here in my early 30s with my son and my then husband.
Today, Green enjoys a highly successful career as a writer, but she tells us that as a child, she would never have imagined that would happen.
I never thought that I'd be a writer. When I was a little girl, I always thought, my first love was always art, and I always thought that I would do something to do with art. I fell into writing quite by chance, but of course, as a child, I adored reading. And in my junior school, I used to pray for rain days, because during recess, or as we call it, break, we had this wonderful library with beanbags, and I could just go and curl up in a beanbag and just lose myself in a book. So I had a very active imagination and really loved just losing myself in books. So I guess it was no surprise that I became a writer.
Jane tells us how her career first took off.
I was a journalist for many years, and then I knew a girl who, I think she was an art historian and had certainly never written anything, and all of a sudden decided to write a book in her spare time. Before you knew it, she'd signed a publishing deal, and I remember thinking, hang on a minute, you know, I'm a journalist, I'm writing, I can do this, if she can do this, I can do this. And that really was the turning point for me. That was the inspiration. Sometime in my late 20s, I decided that I wanted to write a book. And I very naively left my job and gave myself 3 months to write a book and get a publishing deal. And within 3 months, I did have a publishing deal. And that was 12 years ago. And I've never looked back.
From the start, Green's books have constantly delved into themes relating to the complex lives of modern women.
When I started to write my first book, and the first book that I actually wrote was Straight Talking, although that was published later in America. But I had just read a book called High Fidelity by Nick Hornby. And this was a book that everybody I knew was reading, and all the men that I knew were reading it saying, oh my God, this is me. And all the women I knew were reading it saying, oh my God, this is him. And I thought, well, no one's done this for women. Nobody's writing about the plight of the single woman in an urban environment today. So I decided to do that with Straight Talking. And then a few months before it was published, Helen Fielding's book came out, Bridget Jones's Diary. It became a huge success. And I do feel that I wrote, in many ways, the right book at the right time. I was incredibly lucky because there were a couple of other people doing similar things, and the press jumped on it and gave it a name, and they called it chick lit. And that was really the start of a movement that has grown enormously in the last 12 years. I think that there are a lot of misconceptions about chick lit. I think, and I do have, I do have an issue with the title, because I think it's a pejorative, and it shouldn't be, because actually, I think a lot of people are put off. They think it's a fluffy tale of a single 20-something looking for Mr. Right. And actually, what I like to think of it is well-written women's commercial fiction that has this emotional honesty that resonates with the reader. And certainly I get letters from people in their 30s and 40s who say, God, we just picked up Second Chance or Swapping Lives, and we had no idea you were writing for us.
Jane tells us that she is often asked how much of her writing deals with her own personal life.
I've been writing books for 12 years, and during those 12 years I go to book readings and people are always putting up their hands and saying, are you writing about your life? And for 11 of those 12 years I've been saying, no, not at all, it's all entirely fiction. And actually I've realised the last year that of course I'm not writing about my life, but I'm drawing upon my life's experiences, because that's what I'm writing about, life. And actually Second Chance, which was the last one to come out, that was inspired by losing a friend of mine in the tsunami. Piers was actually, he started off as our garden designer, and gardening is one of my obsessions, and he became a friend. I mean, he'd come over every few weeks and he'd often stay with us, and you know, we would go swimming with the kids and we'd have dinner, and we used to walk around the garden with cups of tea and beers and things, and I just adored, he was somebody that I really adored. I mean, he wasn't in a circle, but he was somebody that I just had a real soft spot for, and he was also very present in my life. Then the day after the tsunami happened, I remember sitting in my office and reading about it on the internet and coming across an article that said Brit's still missing. And I thought, well, I wonder if I know anyone. And of course, immediately, you know, Piers' name was up there. I just was utterly blindsided by the grief. Had never quite experienced anything like it. The best way for me to process is to write about it. So that's how I started to write about Second Chance. And then during the course of the writing, my marriage broke up. And so I was able to use a lot of my feelings and my confusion in my characters. And I was able to really process a lot of what I was going through in my personal life through my writing. And I was able to draw upon my life without writing about my life.
Green tells us that one of the things that makes her happiest these days is hearing from her readers.
You know, the thing about writing, it's very solitary. Very rarely get to see how you touch people's lives. So for me, book tours, love them. Love doing book readings, love meeting people and hearing, you know, lovely things. And hearing how much they appreciate my work.
In addition to book tours, Jane frequently hears from her readers through letters and emails. While Jane manages to read every correspondence sent to her, a reply is not always possible, as she leads a very busy daily life as a mother.
Often I think, how in the hell am I going to get through the day? I mean, my days are very, very full and they're very chaotic. My kids are, I have Harrison is 7, Tabitha is 5, and then I have twin boys, Nate and Jasper, who are 4. And I hit the ground running at about 6 o'clock in the morning, unless I oversleep. But right now, the kids are in school, the little ones, till 2 o'clock. And so I have that time to do my writing. That's when I go to the library, and I still write at my local library. And what I love for me is that I'm not on my own in the house, and it feels like something of a routine. It sort of feels like going to an office, and I'm surrounded by people, which I think for my kind of writing is so good. It's the only place I can go to really have some peace and quiet and get away from the phone. And then when I come home, I'm back to being mum. So this is part of my usual daily routine. This is the unglamorous bit where I walk to the end of the road and wait around for sometimes hours for the school bus for the kids to get off. And, you know, my life is not that glamorous. My life is very ordinary. I get to do very glamorous things. You know, I get to be interviewed like this, and I get to do book tours, and occasionally I get to go to nice parties, but I would say 99% of the time, I'm just being mum.
Hi! Why is the camera person there?
Hi, what's this?
And this.
And this? Hello? Oh!
But just being mum, as Jane tells us, is more than enough to keep the author feeling happy and fulfilled every day of her life.
You know, I feel, on the whole, I feel tremendously blessed. I'm very much somebody who you know, believes that the glass is half full. I've gone through things that, you know, could have been really difficult and really unpleasant. I mean, divorce is not pleasant. On any level, it's not pleasant. But you know what? It was fine. It was fine. I have 4 beautiful children from that marriage. I am, you know, blissfully happy in a new relationship, and I have tremendous success in my career. I mean, I feel incredibly lucky and grateful, actually. Don't take any of it for granted. You know, wake up every morning and think, you know, I'm lucky and I'm grateful.